Good morning and welcome to everyone who has joined us for this call. I'm Athene Saul, the chair of the SAMED Regulatory Committee, and I'm joined by my colleague Khatija Suleiman, who's the vice chair of the committee. Just a few formalities before we start. This session is being recorded, and therefore by participating, you are consenting to the recording thereof. Please keep SAMED values in mind when you engage with our speakers, as stakeholders and each other, and please note that the disclaimer around conflicts of interest and competition law. We have outlined some of the competition's do's and don'ts for you to keep in mind during this session, and we encourage you to ask questions, but do ask that you either put them in the chat on the Q&A or raise your hand and then I'll call on you to speak. We'll take questions after the presentations, so please feel free to add them to the chat or hold them until after the presentations. If after the session you still have questions, please reach out to SAMED Secretariat or to the speakers, and we also encourage you to send through topics or speakers that you would like to see at future forums, and these can be added to the chat or you can send them to Caroline at SAMED. Just for some background, the ISO 13485 is a license requirement by SAHPRA for medical device manufacturers and distributors. The SAHPRA issued an extension on this requirement for a period of 3 years, which will end in January 2025. As SAMED, we want to ensure that our members understand the processes and the particulars around ISO 13485, and so we have invited several stakeholders from the SABS, SANAS, and SAHPRA, and some of the local conformity assessment bodies to join us for this Conformity Assessment Alliance. For our first speaker, we have Koleka Nafadi from the SABS, who will share how SABS arrives at a local standard, the standards that are applicable to medtech, the relationship between SABS and SANAS, and how we jointly create capacity and skill development around ISO 13485. Koleka Nafadi is the Manager of Product Certification at South African Bureau of Standards, the SABS. Koleka has been a certification manager for over a decade and is also acting as the head of certification since the 1st of February 2024. Koleka is passionate about conformity assessment, and prior to joining SABS, she worked as a quality control or assurance practitioner for the following organizations: Adcock Ingram Critical Care, SAB Miller, and Consul Glass. And so her work has given her a wide network in various sectors of industry and with several stakeholders such as manufacturers, regulators, accreditation bodies, and academic institutions, etc. Welcome, Koleka, and over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. So I have tried to stick to the script, and hopefully I won't take too long with my presentation. I did time myself, and I did very well when I was timing myself. I will ask that you confirm once you can see my presentation. Just going to put it on presentation mode, and I need to duplicate my screen. Apology.
Athene, I think she just hit leave meeting instead of stop share. Those two buttons are now next to each other on Teams. I'm sure she'll rejoin shortly.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. I also saw in the chat that Sharona said there's a lot of echo. I don't know if any other participants are experiencing that.
Yeah, I'm not experiencing it from my side. I see Kololeka has
Looks like I was,
rejoined.
apologies, looks like I was kicked out.
Not by us, Koleka. That's by
So, yeah,
artificial intelligence.
something strange happened
Technology.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
no worries.
My presentation is loading now.
We can see it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. As confirmed, my name is Koleka Nefadi. It's a short presentation. First, I'm going to answer to these questions that I was asked to talk about. I start off with a quick introduction of SABS and our role. Okay, my slides are not moving. Let's see. Something strange is happening. Okay, there we go. The SABS mandate. SABS is the only national standards body in South Africa established by the Standards Act of 1945, and it exists as a public entity under the Standards Act of 2008. The mandate of the SABS is to develop, promote, and maintain South African national standards, promote quality with respect to commodities, products, and services, render conformity assessment services, and matters connected therewith. The SABS is a hybrid South African it's a national standards body and a conformity assessment service provider. These are the services that the SABS offers. On the left, you'll see system certification, product certification, that's conformity assessment. We also offer inspection services, consignment inspection, and local content verification here at the bottom. And up there are standards development and access to South African national standards and international standards. And we also offer laboratory services, testing services. On the process of developing a standard, whether a standard is a standard that is developed locally, and the word often used is a homegrown standard, or whether an international standard is adopted and made into a South African national standard, a SANS, as we often call it, the process begins with a request. So there would be a request. There's a particular form that is available on the SABS website that has to be completed and submitted either for development of a standard or adoption of a standard. And when a request comes in for development of a standard, the first thing that we do is to verify if there isn't an international standard that can be adopted. We look at that first, and if there isn't, then we will develop a local standard from scratch. But if there is an international standard, then the process would be to adopt an international standard. Adoption of international standards can either go by adopting an international standard wholly as it is, but sometimes we may need to modify an international standard and customize it to our local conditions. So the process goes in stages, and within the stages, there are timelines that are predetermined. So from receiving a request, assessing the relevance and the interest really for the standard to be developed or adopted, it goes to a stage 10, which is where there's verification by a technical committee. You've got different technical committees for the different sectors. I think 13485 falls within the natural sciences sector. So within that sector, there are certain subcommittees. So there will be a review of that. And if it's accepted, it will be endorsed and approved by the standards approvals committee. And then it will proceed to the next stage where the working draft then is prepared. And there will be meetings by the committees of that subcommittee, members of that subcommittee, and the draft work begins. Once that is completed, that's submitted to the committee for further review. And the end of this, once all of the work is done, all the verifications that have been done, the draft is sent out for public comment, which allows for 60 days for the public to make comments on the draft. And when the 60 days ends, it comes back for final review. It may be that from the comments provided by the public, the committee needs to go back and consider those inputs. And if there were any omissions, again, put those in place and then send it out again for review. But finally, the final stage of publication will be then the final editing, verification that due process was followed, and then approval by the standards approval committee for publication. And then that standard gets gazetted and notifications take place. And in recent days, with the advent of social media, the notifications also happen via various social media platforms when the standards are sent out for public inquiry, and even after they have been published. This is just the governance framework, again confirming that we consider if there is an international standard available, but also confirming the act. Central to this is the Standards Act that mandates the SABS to do the work that it does with respect to standards, and the national norms are available guidance documents within the SABS, but basically ensuring that there is consistency in the work that we do, which is aligned to the principles in ISO 9001. The principles that underpin standard development, the principle of openness. It's a collaborative process to make sure that the process is enriched so that quality content is developed. Open system which encourages participation at all levels. It's expanded to include a wide and relevant audience, participation without discrimination at every stage of the development process. Impartiality, the decisions that are based on objective criteria rather than bias, and also guarding that you don't confer the benefit to some organizations over other organizations for whatever reasons. It's a consensus-based process. There must be general agreement. There are votes that are taken. So members of the committees have got voting rights. There are members that there are observer rights and there are voter rights. So whatever resolutions are made, there will be voting that is allowed so that a consensus is built, thus seeking to consider views of all parties that are concerned. The stakeholder engagements as well. So there's involvement of players that may be materially affected by the implementation of the standards, like the industry, the government, consumers, and NGOs. So the participation in the technical committees is essentially open to all interested parties. On conformity assessment, which we also offer as part of the services that the SABS offers, just a definition, it's assessment. Conformity assessment is any activity to determine directly or indirectly that a process, service, or product meets the relevant standards and fulfills the relevant requirements. It plays a critical role in building confidence for sustainable development and the trade in goods and provision of services. We've got first-party conformity claims or certification, second-party. The first party would be general statements provided by manufacturers, for example, things like guarantees that make the products more attractive to users or buyers or purchasers. Second party claims, that would be more like your supplier claims, supplier audits made by supply and retail chains. And then we've got third party conformity, which is independent assessments, certification. Claims of conformity are made by organizations that are independent of the person or organization that provides the product. And these include independent and impartial testing laboratories, certification and inspection bodies. Now, on the relationship between SABS and SANAS, SANAS is mandated by an Act of Government, Act 19 of 2006, as the single national accreditation body that gives formal recognition that laboratories, certification bodies, inspection bodies, proficiency testing scheme providers, and good laboratory practice test facilities are competent to carry out specific tasks. So accreditation is a third-party confirmation then of process. It's a process that third-party confirmation process that verifies that a conformity assessment body like SABS in this particular case is competent to perform specific tasks for which we hold accreditation. We hold accreditation to ISO 17021 for management system certification, ISO 17020 for inspection services, and ISO 17065 for product certification. The SABS laboratories are also accredited to ISO 17025 by SANAS. These are all international standards that we are accredited to. On an annual basis, SANAS assesses the SABS certification division and the laboratories and our processes to ensure that we meet the requirements of these global standards and that we are competent to deliver the services that we are accredited to. On the products that the SABS currently offers certification on, this is product certification. We currently offer conformity assessment services, product certification on the following products that may be of interest to SAMED. Male condoms, you'll see next to the standard there, I've got SANS 4074/ISO 4074. It's an international standard that was adopted as it is. You'll see that the year next to the ISO name is 2015. So that is earlier. So the standard was first published by ISO, and there was interest in South Africa to have that standard adopted, and it was adopted in 2017. The international standard for female condoms was adopted in the same year that it was published by ISO. And the standard for the surgical masks, sutures and ligatures are homegrown South African standards, not adoptions. We also have products that we test, but we have not yet certified that may be of interest to you. Sorry, these are the standards: hypodermic needles, syringes, all of these products, catheters, etc. We have customers that are testing with us, but we have not certified any of these yet. Again, I'm indicating there next to the SANS where a standard is an ISO adoption. ISO 13485 medical devices. The standard specifies requirements for regulatory purposes. It's an internationally agreed standard that sets out requirements for quality management systems specific to the medical device industry. It's designed to be used by organizations throughout the life cycle of medical devices, from initial conception to production, post-production, including final decommissioning and disposal. It also covers aspects such as storage, distribution, installation, and servicing, and the provision of any associated services. So what benefits will certification bring to an organization? As safety and performance of medical devices is paramount in the highly regulated industry, quality management systems are made regulatory or even legal requirements in many countries, and the same thing is happening in our country now. ISO 13485 can help organizations involved in any part of the medical devices life cycle to demonstrate compliance with regulatory and legal requirements, ensure the establishment of QMS practices that consistently yield safe and effective medical devices, manage the risks effectively, improve processes and efficiencies as necessary, gain a competitive edge, and third-party certification being an independent certification body conducting audits to confirm your compliance to a standard can be a way of demonstrating to stakeholders and regulatory authorities that you meet the requirements. So as I think it was already touched on this morning, that no medical device may be manufactured or distributed or imported, exported or sold without a valid SAHPRA medical device establishment license. In South Africa, medical devices are regulated by SAHPRA, and that statement is an extract directly from the SAHPRA website. So just on the readiness of the SABS to offer ISO 13485 certification, We have done the training. Our auditors have been trained. We've got a pool of auditors internally and auditors externally from which we can draw in order to be able to provide the service, the audits. ISO 13485 is system certification. So these are system certification auditors. We are currently in the process of developing procedures, reports, and templates. As you would see, we are not yet accredited. So once the work that we are doing in developing the scheme really is completed, we will be making an application to SANAS for extension of accreditation to our SANS 17021 accreditation certificate for management systems for accreditation. We have a few inquiries in the pipeline, and we will be processing applications in line with our applications process. As I said, it's management system certification. So the process starts with a pre-certification activities, a stage 1 and stage 2. And when all is in order, when that is the stage 2 is completed and all findings have been cleared from stage 1 and non-conformities from stage 2 have been cleared, we make a submission to an independent approval body, the SABS, for a certificate to be issued. And once the certificate is issued, then surveillance activities take place on a yearly basis, confirming continued conformance to the requirements of the standard. The permit is valid for 3 years. And if all is in order by the end of the 3 years, we make an application for renewal of the certificate. So the accreditation function, when we've submitted our application for accreditation at any stage, preferably from stage 2, or if we're not able to get assessed by SANAS at stage 2 before we issue any certificate, we would then issue a non-accredited certificate. But after that, we could also get SANAS to conduct the assessment as we conduct surveillance activities in maintenance of that particular certificate in order for the process of accreditation to be done and finalized. And lastly, I've just got a slide here on product certification, but it's a similar process to system certification that we follow, except that in product certification, there is a sample that is drawn independently and sent for testing. So that is the process that we follow, for example, to certify the condoms and the other products that you certify. The audits take place, and during the auditing, we select samples independently and submit samples for testing. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Koleka. Please stay on for the Q&A session after the presentations. Next, we have representation from SANAS, who will cover the medtech testing capabilities offered by SANAS, how SANAS accredits conformance assessments bodies for ISO 13485, how many conformance assessment bodies are currently being accredited by SANAS for ISO 13485, and how we jointly create capacity and skill development around ISO 13485. Please note, for those medtech companies who hold an ISO 13485 certificate from a conformity assessment body which has not been locally accredited, you need to please take note of the accreditation requirements of this conformance assessment body locally, so you can pass these on to them in order for them to be recognized by SAHPRA. The representation from SANAS today is Muko Moriane. She's an assessment specialist at SANAS. At SANAS, she works on the independent evaluation and accreditation of conformity assessment bodies against recognized standards to ensure impartiality, competence, consistency, and confidence in certifications provided. She has been at SANAS since 2017. Welcome, and over to you, Muko.
Muko, you are on mute. If you just want to unmute yourself.
do that.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Good morning, and thank you for welcoming us, and thank you for inviting us for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Mogo Morianyane. Like it has already been said, I work for SANAS in the certification program for the Conformity Assessment of Certification Bodies under 17021 for the scope and all the management systems under 17021, ISO 17021, 17065, 17024, and verification and validation of greenhouse gases. So that will be ISO 1702219. And today we will be just touching shortly the accreditation process for medical devices. I won't go very deep into the accreditation process. We're just going to highlight the main processes which affect basically all the programs within SANAS. On the SANAS as part of the technical structures under the DTIC, and this just shows the relationship of SANAS with the other technical infrastructure organizations. That is mainly SABS, I think, and there will also MIMISA and NRCS, which NRCS is responsible for the compulsory specifications. NIMISA looks at traceability, and SABS on the technical infrastructure. Our relationship under DTIC, as for them, they are responsible for the standards that are used in all organizations or in all industries, and SANAS will conduct the accreditation based on those standards or those requirements as they are being documented, or they have been documented within the SABS, as well as some regulatory requirements like SAHPRA, which is the one that we are looking at today. And with SANAS, what we do, we only ensures competence of certification bodies or conformity assessment bodies within accredited facilities. And the conformity assessment bodies use accreditation to give assurance and confidence in the results that have been obtained during their operations with the organizations. And the CAPS, or the conformity assessment bodies issue the certificates to the end users and reports that are being accredited once the accreditation has been issued. Our mandate, as the SANAS mandate, as it will be through the Accreditation Act of 2006 to carry out accreditations for conformity assessment bodies in the fields of testing, calibration, verification laboratories, certification bodies, inspection bodies, BEE verification agencies, and also to provide for an internationally recognized and effective accreditation and monitoring system. Accreditation of a facility under the SANAS mandate is an independent recognition by a third party to ensure competence of an organization or of an individual to perform tests or tasks against the scope of accreditation. During the accreditation process, the facility will be, or the facility or the conformity assessment body will be acknowledged, or their management system will be acknowledged to guarantee consistency in the implementation of their processes. And again, during accreditation, we also confirm the technical competency of the facilities, and that will also be providing independent technical appraisers to assure confidence. That will be nationally and internationally. During this accreditation under the SANAS mandate, the principle we mainly look at the main principles to ensure that all the tests or all the certificates or all the reports that are being issued to organizations by the conformity assessment bodies are are based on impartiality, they are based on competency, and basically that will be the technical competency as well as responsibilities. The other principles, there are explanations what you look at further into this. I think, Caroline, we will also be sharing the slides with you if that's okay, for you to have all the explanations. More principles that we also look into for inspiration of confidence and trust during certification or during operations of the conformity assessment bodies include openness, that it will be looking at public perception, confidentiality, way of responding or handling of the complaints, and risk-based approach. The services that are provided by SANAS under this mandate or as per the Accreditation Act include all laboratories, calibration, and they include forensic laboratories, testing laboratories, and all these ones that have been highlighted here. But for 13485, we are also looking at certification bodies, which is the one that is responsible. The program is responsible for ensuring that the certification bodies have competency and they use the mentioned principles from the previous two slides to issue those certificates. During the accreditation process, we look at the few phases. This applies basically to all the programs that I have mentioned, and with the certification being included. It includes the application and document review, and there are other programs that are voluntary, that are under regulations that's compulsory for a pre-assessment. Some of the facilities, even if it's in the voluntary domain, they will still look for pre-assessment. This is when, after the document review, the facility will just request to a pre-assessment by SANAS to just gauge where their management system is or the readiness for them to get into the full process. So after the pre-assessment, based on the results of the pre-assessment, the facility can prepare for an initial assessment, which will include witnessing activities. The results, again, after the initial activities, if everything has been confirmed and there is compliance or conformance to applicable standards, then decision making, it's been taken by the independent AC committee, approvals committee by SANAS to ensure whether accreditation can be granted or if there will still be some more information activities to be carried out for the conformity assessment bodies. And during the cycle, there are different cycles or time frames for the cycles within SANAS for different programs. In certification, the accreditation cycle is 3 years. In the laboratories, it is 5 years. So during that period of the cycle, there will be continued monitoring of accreditation via surveillance assessments. And in the last year of the cycle before the accreditation certificate expires, then we conduct another reassessment which resembles the initial assessment. So the coming 3 slides are only a process or a summary of the processes that I have already mentioned, which will include the application. The first one being the application from the conformity assessment body, which requires accreditation or that will be seeking accreditation in a scope that they are related to. In 13485, the certification bodies will also submit their application form through the SANAS processes, and that application, after being reviewed and accepted by the accreditation manager, then the management review or the documents The management system documents for the conformity assessment are being reviewed by the selected team based on the competency or based on the scope that the accreditation or the conformity assessment bodies are being the conformity assessment body is seeking accreditation for. So based on that recommendation, a pre-assessment or an initial assessment will be carried out with the selected team, as I had already mentioned. And as I also said that the initial assessment includes witnessing and office assessment, whereby the files or the client files that have already been audited by or certified by the client, by the conformity assessment bodies would be reviewed, and recommendation will also be based on the evidence that has been gathered during the assessment. Then there is approval committee, the approval committee review, the decision making, and granting of accreditation, as well as maintaining of accreditation through surveillance activities and reassessment. The accreditation for 13485 certification or for conformity assessment bodies will include using the current versions. The accreditation will be against ISO IC 17021, which is the conformity assessment standard for requirement that outlines the requirements for bodies providing audit and certification of management system. Other criteria used for the accreditation of certification bodies for 13484 will include International Accreditation Forum mandatory documents that are can be accessible from the website of IAF without request. We also have SANAS documents that are also available on the SANAS public domain without request. So with IAF documents, we look at MD9 that is used by SANAS to ensure to look at the scopes of the conformity assessment body that they are wishing they seek accreditation for, and it also outlines the competency criteria and requirements for the personnel within the certification body. That will include application reviewers, that will include the auditing team, as well as the technical and decision makers. IAF-MD 8 is established for assisting the accreditation bodies to be able to select to be able to put together criteria for the competency of the accreditation assessors. This is the team that will be selected to conduct assessments for the international for the accreditation, the certification bodies, that are seeking accreditation. We also look at applicable regulations. In this case, we are looking at the regulations that are related to medical devices as being published by SAHPRA. And of course, we will need our assessors to also have knowledge of ISO 13485, actually good understanding of 13485. And the certification bodies would also have to have implemented their management system based on the requirements of ISO 13485. During the certification, the accreditation process and certification, in the certification process, the accredited certification body will certify organizations with regards to compliance to medical device quality management system and other recognized standards, which we don't exclude, because it might also, there would sometimes be a perception that if a certification body is certifying on 13485, they cannot have other standards that are not included. This is just to show that under ISO IC 17021, certification bodies will still be certifying other recognized international standards such as quality, environmental, Digital, and others that are out there that are also recognized. The main purpose or the main objective of the management system certification will be to provide assurance that the organization has implemented a system for the management system, a system for the management of the relevant aspects of its activities, products, and services in line with the organization's policy and requirements of the respective international management system. And there will be the value of certification will be the degree of confidence and trust that is established by an impartial and competent demonstration of fulfillment of specified requirements by a third party. This third party will be the certification body, and the purpose of SANAS is to ensure that all this provision of assurance and this confidence, the trust it's instilled in or can be attested by the output, which should be the certificate to ISO 13485. What is the status of SANAS currently in relation to 13485 certification? Nationally or within South Africa, SANAS had initially signed the MOU with SAHPRA in 2017. In 2017, for the implementation of medical devices and in vitro diagnostic regulations, that is for 13484. The MOU was just limited to SANAS assisting SAHPRA with the accreditation of conformity assessment bodies in medical device quality management system under 17021 and other additional requirements by SAHPRA. Those allowed certification bodies to provide certification to manufacturers, importers, wholesalers, and distributors in accordance with 14385. In 2022, SANAS extended the MOU with SAHPRA to include other programs such as calibration and testing laboratories against 17025, blood transfusion services, against ISO 15189, and inspection and testing of diagnosed X-ray imaging systems against ISO IC 17020. This is just to show what the interaction between the regulator, our regulator as SAHPRA, also including there are other programs within SANAS, while we have already been working with ISO against ISO 17021 that has been there. And like I think Caroline has already highlighted, those certification bodies that have been accredited by our peers, our international peers, those are not within South Africa. They also have to go to ensure that their system is complying with the accreditation requirements as per SANAS, or they are aligning to the accreditation requirements of ISO IC 17021, and they also include the SANAS, the SAHPRA regulations. So those certification bodies, before they are being registered by SAHPRA, they would send information to SANAS office, and the committee, the technical reviewers, and the independent approvals within SANAS will also review the information submitted by the international CAPS or the internationally accredited CAPS to ensure that they have looked at the requirements and the regulatory requirements, and that can be sent to SAHPRA for registration.
Sorry,
On the international,
Moko. Sorry,
yes.
Moko, just in the interest of time and for us to have enough time for Q&A, are you able to wrap up in about a minute?
Yes, I'm on the
thank
last
you.
2 slides right now.
Okay,
I was
thank
going to
you.
say on the international platform, SANAS has been recognized, has now international recognition for ISO 13485 13485 through the African Corporation, which is the AFRAC. That means that all accredited certification bodies under SANAS can now be using the IAF mark, which is an international accreditation forum. And currently SANAS has 4 accredited CBs for certification of 13485, and 1 CB is in the process. It's currently in the process. In terms of skill development, SANAS has the Knowledge Transfer Center, which is independent of the accreditation core processes, but that knowledge transfer only offers training services to main accreditation standards, as well as activities and best practices. So I think that will be all from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you, Caroline. That is all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Muku, and we look forward to asking you some questions during the Q&A. We're now going to have some insights that will be shared from SAHPRA's Kanyisile Nakuku on the following: why ISO 13485 is the required standard for medical technology companies, the status of the ISO 13485 certification of medtech companies, if this data is available to you, when ISO 13485 will be a requirement, so the deadline, and if it applies to license renewals only, or amendments or startups for people first time applying, and how we jointly create capacity building in the conformity assessment for medtech. So many of you will know Kanyisile Nakuku, who works as a medical device registration officer at SAHPRA, as your go-to for regulatory and license queries. And we are most grateful for this opportunity to engage with our regulator. We will hear from Kanyisile also a little later on the products registration roadmap. But first, let's dive into ISO 13485. Thanks, Kanyisile. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Athene. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, well, on my side, I can see it.
So it's on slide 9. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Kanyisile Nkuku, and as already mentioned, I'm the Medical Device Registration Officer. So I'll be providing a few overview on the ISO 13485 requirements, and also why it is such an important standard within South Africa in terms of all the license holders that have been licensed under Section 22C of the Medicines Act. So the responsibility of SAHPRA is outlined in the Medicines and Related Substance Act, and also we have the Hazardous Substance Act, in accordance with Section 2B of the Medicines Act. And with SAHPRA, it is to ensure compliance with existing legislation that every organization that holds a medical device establishment license is required to have a formal quality management system in place. Previously, most applicants, when they were submitting, they'll submit a quality manual that was already in line with ISO 13485. So with the ISO responsibility of SAHPRA, the revised medical device regulations that were previously published for public comment and have recently closed notes that the certification quality standard for medical devices quality management system is ISO 13485, and the requirements for regulatory purposes will be required for new medical device establishment licenses, renewal, amendment, as well as associated records. And with this, I will also go into the question that was asked in the beginning of who is supposed to be ISO 13485 certified in a later slide. And the license holders will be certified by an independent conformity assessment body, which has been accredited by SANAS and recognized by SAHPRA to be compliant with the South African legislation and regulations for medical devices, as already mentioned by Mocha in her presentation. The role of SAHPRA, as we're all aware, looks at the safety, quality, and performance. And we have 3 different license holders in this umbrella of establishment license holders, which is the distributor, manufacturer, and wholesaler. And SAHPRA has published in our MD-031 that the ISO 13485 requirement is currently applicable to distributors and manufacturers, and that further communication will be published for wholesalers. So why the focus on ISO 13485? So within SAHPRA, there has been also a few companies that we have been investigating, whereby we found that they are doing critical sterilization and they are only certified according to ISO 9001, and they don't validate their sterilization processes, or validation was not evaluated by an expert. There's also no traceability of implants from foreign manufacturers to patient and hospitals. There's also cheap, unqualified implants, for example, material imported with no certificate of analysis or verification. We have companies that buy peak material from implants from commercial suppliers. The glue used on stature attachments to needles are bought from local hardware store. Cleaning and decontamination processes of equipment for refurbishing, like for the scopes, are not validated. We also have companies that have Class C medical device approval at SAHPRA with the Class 1 EC certificate. There's also clinical testing of local manufactured implants that are being done without SAHPRA approval. And we also have major supply of companies that have illegal products. And there's multiple pictures that have come through for SAHPRA to review. So the ISO 13485 requirement extension that was given to license holders, one of the key requirements for applicants to renew the establishment license after the period of 5 years was to have the ISO 13485 certificate. And these were the applicants that submitted their licenses applications that were issued in 2017, and the licenses were expiring in 2022. And when we look at those ones that were expiring in 2022, there was a total of 669 applicants that were issued licenses, and of which 239 required renewal starting from April 2022. And during that time, we only had 1 local conformity assessment body in the country. However, now we do have 10 that has been recognized on the SAHPRA website. And we've also noted that applicants are dependent on international conformity assessment bodies to certify them against ISO 13485. And also there comes the thing of cost in terms of using international conformity assessment body. And that is why SAHPRA then reviewed that we should be extending it to 3 years. And I'll also now dwell into when the deadline will be. So the status of ISO 13485 in terms of medtech companies, unfortunately, we don't have a list of companies that have already been ISO 13485 certified. This is due to the extension that has been given. Most of the license holders that were renewing due to the extension were not submitting with the 13485 certificate. And then in terms of the deadline for the requirement, in the document that has been published, which is MD-031, it states that it is 3 years from signing of the document, and the document was signed on the 17th of January 2022, which means that the deadline will be in 2025, just after the 17th of January. And the requirement for ISO 13485 will apply to renewals, amendments, and new startups. And for new startups, there has been discussions to say that a new startup company, it won't be able to be ISO certified until they have their processes in place. Therefore, with SAHPRA, we will be publishing also a statement, communication to say that will clearly state that how do startups then submit their license applications without an ISO 13485 certificate. And they will need to submit a letter stating that they're a new startup, therefore they are still still in the process of getting ISO certified, and the license is required in order for them to also then submit to the conformity assessment body for them to be certified. So we will be making that requirement, and also noting that startups will not be able to submit the certificate when submitting the application form. So there are a few communication documents that are on the website for conformity assessment bodies. I've noted that also within the forum, there will be a few conformity assessment bodies that will be talking about conformity assessment and also the challenges that they are foreseeing. So the documents is MT032. We also have the SAHPRA checklist and also the declaration. And Mocha has also mentioned that for companies that have been ISO certified by conformity assessment bodies that are outside of South Africa and have not yet been recognized, it is key for them to also ensure that they do liaise with SANAS to ensure that we can add that conformity assessment body onto the SAHPRA recognized list. And the requirements for conformity assessment body is to ensure that they have compliance to the South African regulatory requirements. They also have proof of training regarding compliance to the regulatory requirements, which is the medical device regulations, as well as the Medicines and Related Substances Act 101. They should also have certification of a quality management system as per ISO 17021. And we also have compliance to relevant international accreditation forum. And there is MD9 also mentioned by Mocha in her presentation, and also to make available to SAHPRA information regarding their organizational structure, ownership, legal and natural persons exercising control over the conformity assessment body. And the way forward, what SAHPRA has done is that we've given the extension for 3 years, which is slowly coming to light. Next year, it's already 2025. And we also have the conformity assessment bodies that are submitting to SANAS for recognition. And once SANAS approves the conformity assessment body to conduct the audit, you have the manufacturers that are submitting their establishment license to SAHPRA and also having the conformity assessment body do the audit. So then the certificate can also be issued to the manufacturer distributor, and that can be submitted to SAHPRA. In terms of engaging with conformity assessment bodies, the way forward that SAHPRA is currently taking, we've noted that there isn't enough conformity assessment body. As mentioned, there's only about 10 that have been recognized by SAHPRA, and majority of those 10, it's international ones, which puts the local companies within South Africa in a very tough spot. So SAHPRA is looking at having a joint workshop with both SANAS and conformity assessment bodies on how we can make a way to ensure that industry, is taken care of, and that by the time SAHPRA's deadline comes, we do have more conformity assessment bodies in place within South Africa, because we don't want to keep on extending the deadline. That will also disadvantage the main users of the products, which is the patients, and also looking at extending the scopes of conformity assessment bodies within South Africa, because currently it is only quality management system, but we're also discussing to look at having a hybrid program for registration, whereby conformity assessment bodies can also be looking at the products. So yes, that will be all from SAHPRA. This will be at the end.
Thank you so much, Kanisile, for giving us the SAHPRA perspective and the regulatory compliance regarding this. Next, we are going to hear from our local conformity assessment bodies. First, we have SACAS, who will share their company ISO 13485 scope and expertise, as well as some practical tips on the ISO 13485 journey. We have Pedro Dutoit, who is currently heading up the SACAS SA branch in the role of Managing Director and has been involved in accredited certification audits and related activities since 2016. He's also a SAATCA Register Lead Auditor for ISO 13485 and completed his BTech Engineering degree at the Vaal University of Technology. SACAS is a SANAS accredited and SAHPRA approved certification body or conformance assessment body, which is also recognized by the International Accreditation Forum. Welcome to you, Pedro, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, SAMED, for allowing us or for allowing me to present and to form part of the meeting. And also, a warm welcome to all of the delegates and all of the clients. I see there's a whole list of our clients who's already certified also on the meeting. So I'm not going to be too long. Just as a quick introduction, like she said, I'm the Managing Director of SACAS, which is a SANAS accredited certification body, as well as SAHPRA recognized certification body, or as they refer to it in the Act, Conformity Assessment Body. And like Morgo mentioned earlier, we are very proud that our certification is also recognized by the IAF, the International Accreditations Forum. So just quickly, in a nutshell, our accreditation with SANAS, we are accredited for 8 different schemes of certification. Our schemes include Quality Management System, ISO 9001, Environmental Management, ISO 14, HACCP, which is SANS 10330, ISO 22000, which is Food Safety Management System, ISO 45000, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. We also accredited for product certification under a wide range of standards, as well as information security management systems against the requirements of ISO IEC 27001. And then also, more importantly and more applicable to this meeting, is the ISO 13485 2016, which is a quality management system for medical devices. So this is just to show to you our certificate of accreditation with SANAS, and like Morgo has said, our quality management system as a conformity assessment body needs to conform to the requirements of ISO IEC 17021-1 2015, and you will see together with the certificate of accreditation, typically they issue a scope of accreditation, which is an annexure that comes with the certificate of accreditation. And in the scope of accreditation, towards the middle of the page, you will note that it highlights that we, as an accreditation body, we comply with the accreditation criteria as laid down in 17021-1 2015, and we are authorized to certify organizations to ISO 13485 2016. So one of the questions asked by the speaker or the chairman or chairperson for me to discuss is to just elaborate on our scope and expertise. So the schedule of accreditation or scope of accreditation annexure provides you as a medtech company with insight into which areas we have already successfully demonstrated competence. So as you would have heard when Morgo spoke earlier, their role as a accreditation body is to verify competency in certification activities. And the certification activities is scoped in line with the requirements of IAF MD9. So in accordance with IAF MD9, these are the scopes in which we as SACAS has already demonstrated competence. We have a wide range of permanent and freelance auditors, especially geared for ISO 13485 2016 certification related activities. And if I can quickly just run through them, if you look at the first technical area, which is non-active medical devices, that's general non-active non-implantable medical devices, devices for wound care, as well as non-active implants. In this technical area, we have medical practitioners, multiple medical practitioners that has worked in the industry for a number of years, who specifically have knowledge in the use and the application of these medical devices. In terms of non-active implants, we also have clinical technologists who specialized in neurophysiology, so who actually performed implants of non-active medical devices and participated in these types of activities. In terms of active medical devices, general active medical devices, currently we have technical specialists who's been working within the industry with medical device manufacturers, some of the larger names within the industry. And these personnel have got competencies as clinical engineers who work specifically on the servicing, maintenance, sale, and distribution of the general active medical devices. In terms of the sterilization methods for medical devices, we also have demonstrated competence in ethylene oxide gas sterilization, as well as moist heat sterilization. And this competence has been demonstrated by by a lot of our auditors who worked in these areas, specifically in manufacturing environments where these products and devices are also sterilized through the various sterilization processes. We also have a technical specialist who completed a master's in medical device design and development validation, as well as is currently busy with a PhD in medical device design and development. And then for parts and services, which is the last scope on IFMD 9, we've also demonstrated competence in distribution, maintenance, and transportation services. And I'm also very pleased to announce that we recently had a SANAS assessment with the upgrade of scope, during which our competence was evaluated in terms of IVD or in vitro diagnostic reagents manufacturing, and we had a successful outcome. So the outcome was unconditional accreditation, which means there was no non-conformities recorded during the audit from SANAS's side. And for that, we have specialists in the industry who's been working in pathology laboratories, as well as reagent manufacturing, and who's got qualifications in biomedical technologies. So that scope of accreditation will be added to our current scope of accreditation within the next month or two max. You will also see the scope of accreditation, including the IVD reagents manufacturing. So the scope of accreditation, is freely available on SANAS's website. So if you want to be updated on our status in terms of our competencies, in which areas we have already demonstrated competencies, you are more than welcome to have a look at these scopes of accreditations. And in areas where we have not yet necessarily demonstrated specific competencies, like Morgo explained, the accreditation process, we can apply for accreditation and as an upgrade of scope, be included as part of our scope of accreditation in this regards. Then in terms of the training course that we provide, we also have an independent section that performs training. Our training is SAHPRA registered. So the SAHPRA registered training is for QMS, ISO 9001, lead auditors, EMS lead auditors, QMS for medical device lead auditors, and occupational health and safety management system lead auditor training. So the training which is more relevant to you as industry or you as the medtech companies is ISO 13485 implementation course. This is an implementation and facilitation course which we present, which provides you with detailed insight of the standard requirements and how you should go about when implementing the system in your organization and what is the specific requirements within the standard. Then if you are responsible for internal audits within your organization, the Module 2 course deals specifically with internal audits, techniques and practices. And if you wish to also register as a lead auditor, you can attend the Module 3 course, which is the SAHPRA registered training course, which recognize that this training has been evaluated by SAHPRA, who is the training registration association, or who's accredited by SANAS. Then additional courses which I also personally feel can assist you as an organization is the ISO 14971, a medical device, the application of risk management to medical devices. I'll elaborate a bit more in detail later on why I feel this is important. And then also incident investigation and root cause analysis. These are techniques that would form part of your day-to-day activities as the management representative for your organization's quality management system for medical devices. And it is recommended that you also pursue these courses. So the speaker or the chairperson asked me to give some in terms of medical device organizations and who is currently on their route or journey to obtain ISO 13485 2016 certification. So I think just as a brief, I think for all of you out there, it's unclear where do you start. What is expected of you as a medtech company? What do you need to know? You have maybe obtained the standard and you've gone through the training, but what is the starting blocks for you to establish and implement your quality management system for medical devices in terms of ISO 13485 2016? So my advice would be to start with defining your context. The context is who and what you are as an organization. As you would have heard previously, the introduction of ISO 13485, the quality management system for medical devices, highlights that it can be applied or used by an organization involved in one or more stages of the life cycle of medical devices. That includes design and development, production, storage, distribution, installation, servicing, final decommissioning and disposal of medical devices, or the provision of associated activities, the technical support, or any of those. So once you have a clear understanding where you fit within this life cycle of medical devices, then you know what you need to design your quality management system around and what your management system should cater for. Secondly, once you have a clear understanding of your context, clause 4.1.2 in the standard require that you as an organization need to determine the processes needed for the effective implementation of your quality management system and their application, as well as the sequence and interaction of these processes. This is part of establishing your context. What is the process needed? What do I actually do as a medical device manufacturer, importer, or distributor? And where do I fall within this life cycle? So that when you establish your system, that it is detailed and specifically aligned to your processes and activities. And that's where you then go through all of the standard requirements and the clauses following. And then the last thing, which I also think is a crucial starting point, is to apply a risk-based approach to the control of these processes. So these processes include your supporting processes, which has been highlighted in clause 6 of the standard, which includes human resources, infrastructure, work environment, etc. What is the controls? What is potential hazards and risks in these processes? And how will I go about within my quality management system to address these risks? Secondly, looking at the main operational processes, which is your customer-related processes, the sales process, where you determine your customer requirements. If you are involved in the design and development cycle, to identify what is potential risks and controls needed throughout your design and development process. And then when dealing with your outsourced providers or your external suppliers of products, processes, or services, what controls do you have over these and the risk related to the use of these controls, and then the actual operations, the control of your actual product or service provision, and how you intend to go about in terms of controlling these processes aligned with the risks that was identified. So that's in a nutshell my recommendation and my 5 cents of where you should start if you have not yet already started with the establishment of your quality management system for medical devices. This is a good starting point, and this is what my recommendation is to you as an organization. During the session later on, there's also some time being allocated for any questions. So if you want to, you can list the questions in the chat box, and then I will address them as we go to that session. But for any information, you're more than welcome to contact us. There's our contact details, or you can find us at www.sacas.co.za. But yeah, thank you very much for the chairperson for allowing us to present and for inviting us to the session. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thanks very much, Pedro, for that insightful presentation. And please do stay on for questions at the end. Next, we have JC Auditors to tell us about their scope and some of the common or typical mistakes that they do come across when they're auditing medtech companies against ISO 13485. We're joined by Oliver Naidu, who is the Managing Director of JC Auditors. Oliver Naidu presented to members towards the end of last year. So if he looks familiar, you probably do recognize him from that session. Over to you, Oliver. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Athene, and good morning, everybody. And thanks for the platform again, just to share on some key aspects in terms of ISO 13485. Caroline said to me I should take the liberty of just sharing some key learnings. And the main intent, colleagues, and we should never forget, the whole point of ISO 13485 certification is so that as an industry we deliver the devices to the patients in order to meet the performance and efficacy requirements. So the intent of the standard is quite personal, and amidst all of the processes and systems that one would need to go through as a manufacturer or distributor or as a CB, we are absolutely mindful of this crucial outcome that we all need to safeguard. So in my presentation, I'm just going to chat around some of the audit findings or key areas as we see it, where there are opportunities for improvement that as an industry, we can look at mitigating risk, improving our processes, and to be honest, this standard and any ISO standard is helping a business develop systems that promote sustainability. So it's not purely to meet regulatory requirements, and not only to deliver on positive patient outcomes, but it is also intended to help a business manage itself more professionally, profitably, and obviously more sustainably. So there are various clauses, as you may well know, in the standard that one would need to demonstrate conformance to. Clause 4, and what we found here, or some of the gaps, often there were no written quality agreements with suppliers. Now, you know you're only as good, or your product's only as good as the materials and the services that go into it. Hence, it is absolutely vital when you are developing your processes or services that you look carefully at ensuring that your suppliers help you to comply and conform with the requirements. The other notable exception we found was the procedure for validation and the application of computer software. Everything's IT driven nowadays, and it's becoming more and more so with the Internet of Things approach. Hence, the need to validate is crucial, and this was another gap that we have found on a number of the audits that were conducted. I've just extracted most of these slides from training sessions we've done to demonstrate what the inherent requirements are. And I will, as we go through it, just using the highlighter, indicate some of the learnings we found from audits conducted in the medtech and other sectors. Now, the requirement for there to be a medical device file for each family or type of device is essential. And this device, this medical device file should convey product information, instructions for use, manual, brochure, and if you are in the service or installation subsector, then the manual should also provide requirements for installation and servicing. We often found this to be an area for improvement, where the manual was either not adequately addressing the device requirements, or it was incomplete in some way. Objectives are a requirement in the standard. And again, this was a fairly common audit finding. And I think that sometimes, as the industry, we try to be too complex, and in so doing, we often don't quantify targets that can be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So colleagues, when you are developing your 13485 standard, look at your business practically. What are the actual fundamentals that you want to achieve? If it's to grow market share by 10%, then put that down as an objective. If it's to minimize customer returns by 2%, put that down, monitor and measure. So the standard is intended to practically allow you to run your business whilst fulfilling the requirements of the standard. And that's just an example in that slide of a fairly typical quality objective that is available. The other notable audit finding was in connection with HR, specifically the lack of evidence or records to confirm that the individuals in the process did possess the required competence, the training, and that there was evidence of evaluation. So certain individuals in some processes have a critical role to play in ensuring the medical device fulfills the performance and efficacy requirements. If they have not been assessed, if there's no ongoing on-the-job training, it can be a massive risk. Hence the need to maintain records. What we also have realized in the busy world, training does happen, assessments are conducted, but the records are not always available. So part of the challenge for the industry, I think, is not just to do the right things, but to develop the system to record that you are doing the right things. And from our engagement with the medical device sector, we're very comforted by the fact that a large number of players in the sector are operating at a really good level. in terms of regulatory requirements, but also in terms of processes. And I think it's driven by the demand from the sector. So in saying that, don't reinvent the wheel, and I'll talk about that later on, but rather focus on using your framework, but making sure there's a record to demonstrate the good systems that you probably already have in place. In Clause 6, there's a requirement for infrastructure. Notable absent in some of our audits was the IT component. And as I've mentioned, there's a huge tendency worldwide for hacking attempts and ransomware where IT systems are being hacked. So here the standard looks at how does one have a data backup system? Do you have an IT policy? What antiviruses do you have? Have you addressed social engineering in terms of staff that may click on an email that could expose your entire system to ransomware or to corrupt data? And this was another notable area where we found sometimes lacking in companies we've audited. Clause 6 talks to work environment, and here we found two notable issues. The one is around evidence to demonstrate controlled conditions, such as control of temperature, control of humidity, and the other notable section in Clause 6 of the standard was the way in which temporary workers were being utilized. Either they need to be competent through training and evaluation, or they ought to be supervised by a competent person. And this was, again, an area for improvement, and in, I think, 2 or 3 cases, audit findings. Clause 6, again, contamination control. Here we found that there was inadequate controls to handle product returns, specifically in relation to contaminated products. Either lack of segregation, I think, in the one case, or in the other case, lack of documents to confirm that the required quantities had been brought back and were being managed in the correct and required manner. Clause 7 talks about production and service provision. And here we found a notable exception. If one is involved in installation and if you're outsourcing, there must be evidence of training or communication of the requirements with your service provider. And this was, again, one of the notable exceptions that we found. Control of monitoring and measuring equipment. And the reality is, the equipment that we provide and utilize to the healthcare practitioners are used to diagnose and provide the practitioner with information to treat the patient. So if the equipment is not calibrated and the validity is not ensured, it can result in inaccurate results, which can have, obviously, a hugely negative impact on the patient. So here we found that the calibration schedule was often lacking, either in terms of the frequency of the servicing and inspection, or often calibration stickers or certificates were not available, so one couldn't validate that the equipment is complying to the specified intervals or the OEM intervals. Complaint handling is obviously a critical requirement in the standard, and I'm not going to go through the requirements, but one of the things we found is that often companies did investigate. Sometimes there was a lack around root causes, but often we found, in terms of audit finding, that the resolution was not definitive and the trends were not analyzed so that information can be sourced to make decisions that will then improve the process and future service provision. Control of non-conforming product is dealt with in Clause 8. And here we found, again, very common audit finding. When non-conforming product is noted, it needs to be quarantined. And this was often a very common audit finding where the system in place was not adequately implemented to ensure the product was segregated, there was restricted access to prevent the undesirable potential impact of having contaminated or non-conforming product go to the patient. Aging stock is another, or was another common audit finding, where the requirements for expiry dates, etc., were often not adequately implemented. Okay, these are all requirements, but I'm not going to talk through them now because obviously I have 10 minutes and I can't go through it. But it's important in developing your systems that all these requirements are unpacked and the records are maintained to demonstrate how does one comply with the requirements. Immediately, and I had 10 minutes. I think I've done well so far. Some golden rules. Keep it simple. What we have seen is sometimes an organization wants to make the system so comprehensive and vast and expansive that they often get lost in it, and it's not practical. So don't reinvent the wheel. Use what you have. If you're in business for any length of time, for sure, you've got systems in place. You do have a structure. And you do have systems. So rather use or reference what you have in place and then bolt on any omissions that may be missing in terms of what the ISO 13485 standard requires. And then, colleagues, the second to last bullet is important. Ensure that the procedures reflect your current practices and make it practical, and ensure that staff involved in the processes are intimately aware of what their role is in fulfilling the outcomes to the client and to the patients ultimately. So, as was mentioned, I think from the outset, with the deadline fast approaching, there's a need for us as industry to be more efficient and ensure there's capacity built within the sector to meet the deadlines. So we've come up with a 5-step process: apply, assess, adjust, analyze, achieve. We want to try and help the industry achieve these objectives efficiently whilst delivering on the very important performance requirements of the standard. I won't say much more than that because I've got limited time again. We've also realized there's a huge need to almost become an advocacy to the industry. We're working with, obviously, SAMED. We work with SALDA, with the MDMSA, but even with other non-association members, we need to create the awareness. We need to conscientize, or else it will be very difficult to audit a company who hasn't got a full understanding of how to implement. So we've also developed a fully online, on-demand training course, which is available to do at your leisure, to upskill your staff in terms of what are the requirements, what are the actual implementation practical aspects, and of course for internal auditor as well. And we will continue to do that, to advocate, to conscientize, because we need to make the industry aware of what they ought to do if we are to manage the situation in a sustainable way going forward. And finally, I have a short 4-minute video just summarizing what the standard is all about, and then we'll share our contact details. So hang on a sec. I just want to quickly reshare this because I think I forgot to share my sound. Sorry, I'm just going to try that again. Just confirm that you have sound on your side, Athene.
Oliver, actually, I'm not hearing any sound coming through. So
Okay,
you might be hearing it on your side, but I'm definitely not hearing anything.
Apologies. One more try, and then we'll call it quits.
In this video, we will cover the implementation requirements for ISO 13485, which is the international standard for quality management systems in the medical device industry. ISO 13485 is a comprehensive standard that outlines the requirements for a quality management system specifically designed for medical device manufacturers and distributors. To successfully implement ISO 13485, you need to understand its key requirements and how they apply to your organization. The key requirement is senior management commitment. Top leadership must demonstrate their dedication to quality and be actively involved in the implementation process. This commitment is often reflected in the development and communication of a quality policy that aligns with the standard's principles. The quality policy must include your company's quality objectives and targets. The primary aim of these objectives is to ensure that they are aligned to deliver on positive outcomes for the patient. So think these objectives through and make them practical, aligning them with your business processes, bearing in mind that one should be able to monitor and track progress towards achieving them. ISO 13485 mandates the establishment of a robust quality management system that covers various aspects of your organization's operations. You'll need to create and maintain documented procedures for document control, risk management, design and development, and more. Product realization is a critical aspect. It involves defining processes for product design, development, manufacturing, and service provision. You must ensure that your products meet the required quality standards and safety regulations. ISO 13485 emphasizes the importance of measurement, analysis, and monitoring of processes to ensure product conformity. Regular calibration of equipment and monitoring of customer feedback are essential components. Managing risk is a key requirement. Identify and assess risks associated with your processes and implement controls to mitigate them. This helps ensure the safety and effectiveness of your medical devices. ISO 13485 also requires strict adherence to regulatory requirements in the regions where your products are sold. In South Africa, SAHPRA have indicated that all companies that manufacture and distribute medical devices will be required to obtain ISO 13485 certification before April 1st, 2025 in order to apply or renew medical device licenses. One is also required to stay updated on regulations and make necessary adjustments to your processes accordingly. Continual improvement is at the heart of ISO 13485. Regularly review your quality management system and processes to identify areas for enhancement. Encourage employee involvement and feedback to drive continuous improvement. Ensure that your staff is trained and competent to perform their roles effectively. This includes training records, skill assessments, and maintaining a competent workforce. Implementing ISO 13485 requires dedication, commitment, and a systematic approach to quality management. By adhering to these key requirements, your organization can not only achieve ISO 13485 certification, but also consistently deliver safe and effective medical devices to improve patient outcomes. In conclusion, remember that the point of ISO 13485 certification is to deliver on medical device performance and efficacy so that patient care is optimized.
Okay, that's it, Athene. Thank you very much for your attention, colleagues, and look forward to the Q&A later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oliver, for your insightful presentation. We now have some time to take questions before we move on to the roadmap for medical devices. And thank you, Franji. I see you've already kicked off our Q&A in the chat. So maybe we should just move forward on some of those questions. So Franji wanted clarification. Does it mean that licenses will be cancelled if the company does not produce the ISO 13485 certificate by the deadline or after the deadline? Kanisile, thank you for responding and clarifying that you will be publishing a notice from SAHPRA for those companies that renewed in 2022, and license will will be suspended, not cancelled until compliance. So thank you for that. The other clarification from Franji required about the latest government gazette. And thank you again, Kanyisile. So in the interest of time, I won't really go through those that have already been answered. And so Hanley raised a question to Pedro. When a client company selects a conformity assessment body, do they have to select the conformity assessments body with the same scope as the client company's list of products on their SAHPRA license? Pedro, are you able to please respond to that?
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Hanley. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in a nutshell, like I mentioned, and I think Morgo also raised this during her presentation, the scope of accreditation, as I demonstrated earlier, is a scope that provides you with confidence that the conformity assessment body has already been assessed against these products and technical categories and they have already demonstrated the necessary competence to be accredited for these products, services, and activities. So that's a good starting point. But yes, if a certification body or conformity assessment body does not necessarily have that as part of their scope of accreditation, the same process will be followed, as I explained, which we recently went through when we applied for an upgrade of scope, where SANAS then joins us during the audit and they evaluate our competencies and our activities in auditing that scope specifically, where we have recently been recommended for upgrade of scope for the inclusion of IVD reagent manufacturing products. So that's typically the accreditation process that is followed. But it's a good starting point to also see whether or not the certification body has already demonstrated the competencies. But like I said, there is a process of applying for upgrades of scope to also include that products or services or medical devices as part of the accredited scope. I hope I answered the question, Hanley.
Thank you, Pedro. The next one I just want to cover, and I think it's a very important clarification, where I think, Franji, you requested about the non-sterile, non-measuring class A as being non-regulated. Kanisile, please, can you unmute yourself and just confirm as per your response in the chat? But I think it'll be good for the members to hear it directly from you.
Okay. Thank you, Khadija. So it's only non-sterile, non-measurable Class A medical devices, manufacturers and distributors that are exempted. So sterile and also measurable are still mandated to be licensed. Therefore, the ISO 13485 will be a requirement for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A few people requested, thanked about the video, Oliver, and thank you for providing the email on which they can reach out to you for accessing the video. There's another question. If a conformity assessment body has been accredited with SANAS, will SAHPRA accept that, or will they be doing their own assessments for accreditation? Perhaps we can get Moko to explain that.
Thank you very much for the question, Caroline. With the MOU with SAHPRA, SANAS, once the conformity assessment body has been accredited, then SAHPRA will accept that the conformity assessment body has to submit the accreditation certificate, probably with other information that is needed by SAHPRA to SAHPRA, and that will be accepted.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Hanley. And another one, sorry, Fizikelo, from Hanley, you've now asked another question regarding a company with a sauna that falls under radiation control. Do they also need ISO 13485? Maybe if you want to unmute yourself, or Caroline, if you can unmute Hanley and he can maybe give clarification on his question.
Hanley, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Currently, a lot of the smaller companies bringing in sonars or lasers normally would only get a permit from radiation control. So what I'm asking is, do they also, in my mind, they also need a establishment license and also need ISO 13485 implementation, but I want that confirmation. Is that clear?
Kanye, is that something you can take on?
Yes, so they will also be required to have a license and also be ISO 13485 certified. So the permit by our radiation control subunit is only for the product, and then they also will be having the establishment license, and they will need to comply with the ISO 13485 quality management system requirement.
Thanks, Kanyasili, but will the establishment license and an ISO implementation be a prerequisite to get the permit at radiation control?
Yes, so in terms of medical devices that require two processes, we are working on a streamlining process that will also be published on the website for them to understand which one comes first and also which one comes last. And the permit will be only at the end. So the first step will them having an establishment license and be ISO 13485 certified, and then they will do the permit for radiation control.
Thank you. And that does that include for veterinary products as well as human products?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eugene wanted clarification on some dates. And he says, is it first 17th of Jan or 1st of April? It would actually be, I think, the SAHPRA MD31 September 2022. The date is indicated as 1st of April 2025. Kanisila, can you confirm that, please?
Yes, that is correct. So the communication MD31, it's more clear. In the other MD30, we will be updating to ensure that it is also clear for applicants to not be confusing the two. But indeed, it is no later than April 2025.
Thanks for that clarification, Kanyasile. So we just also have a question from Dikaledi, that if a company is contracted to act as a sales agent, would those agents be required to have an establishment license? I think that question is for Kanyasile.
Okay. So sales agents don't fall in the three different license types. And I think it would be better if the lady can send an email, because there are some sales agents, though they'll call themselves sales agent. However, they are the ones who are responsible for the product in the country. What they will be doing is that they will be acting as a seller, as the definition in our act does state that somebody who sells a medical device should be licensed. So you just need to provide your scenario to say, what exactly is that person doing? Are they acting as a marketing agent? Are they only facilitating the sale? Are they responsible for importing any product into the country? What exactly is the activity? Because that will determine now into the different definitions where they fall.
Thanks. And then we just have one additional question on the deadline. It just one of the attendees have mentioned that there's an error in that. It seems that there's an error in that September 22 document because the letter of communication from the CEO was dated the 17th of January 2022. It did state 3 years from date of signature. Any further comment on that, Kanyasile?
That's the one that we said that we'll be updating, because in all the stakeholder engagements, we have said 1st of April 2025.
Okay, sorry, I might have missed you saying that. And then there's been a question from Tshego. Are the human tissue allografts classified as medical devices?
So can I request that specific medical device questions be sent on email? Because I'll need also, I think it will be unsafe to just say it is a medical device without having all the information.
Yeah, I know, sure, okay. And then we've just had a comment from Muku that please note that the accreditation for ISO 13485 certification is based on a management system and not your product or service certification. And then Hanley had another question that if an establishment license outsources their warehousing to a third party, does the third party need ISO 13485 even if they're a wholesaler?
Currently, no. And also stated for wholesaler, it hasn't been mandated for them to be ISO 13485 certified. We've said that we will communicate the requirement in terms of their quality management system in due time.
Thanks, Kanyasile. And then I had a question for Koleka from the SABS. So what I saw from your presentation is that you're still in the process of your accreditation. So how long do you anticipate that to still take? Because obviously there might be players in the industry wanting to use your services, and obviously the deadline is kind of looming. So do you have any comments for that, Koleka?
Yeah, it is a priority project for us. We are targeting within the next 3 months to be completed with the development of the management system internally so that we can make an application. So realistically, we're talking June.
And then spin of thought I had on that is then obviously you might have an influx of people contacting you. So do you have the capacity? Should you have like a sudden influx of
So just in terms, because it's a management system certification scheme, we've got a pool of auditors internally, but we also have external audit and external auditor pool that's contracted to us that we can tap into to meet the demand.
Okay, so from what you said, the whole process, I'm not sure if you just 3 months still to go in your process, or it takes longer than that to actually get the accreditation. So how long have you been in this process?
We started last year with the training and competency development process. And we are now, as I said, developing our manuals, our procedures. And once that is done, we will be making an application to SANAS for accreditation. We do have already a few inquiries, applications to process. So we are looking realistically getting assessed possibly at stage 2 of the initial assessment stages, because stage 1 really is for us to verify readiness of the client, but the audit proper begins with the stage 2.
Okay, thank you. And then I just had also like a question for Muku from SANAS. So from your experience, because you've been accrediting these organizations as conformity assessment bodies, obviously it differs per whoever's applied to, but the process for them to be accredited by SANAS, what have you seen the basic timeline to look like?
Thank you for the question. It also depends. There are different factors there. It depends whether the conformity assessment body has already been accredited for other management systems as well, because I think for our conformity assessment bodies, those we have presented today, they actually showed that they already have. I think that's Mr. Naidu has already said, don't invent the wheel. All we have to do is just see where, because 13485 is also more or less the same as, it has same clauses as 9001, so they integrate the system. So it only depends on where the conformity assessment body is. With Koleka now saying that there are already some other companies like SABS, like she's just said, they started with training. They need to ensure that they have competent personnel. They still have to, they have clients that are applying, and they still have to go through that stage one and then contact SANAS for witnessing and for office assessment. Basically, there are different factors. They cannot just say 3 months, 6 months. It depends on the availability also of the organizations to allow the conformity assessment bodies to conduct those audits.
Sure. And then so then, for example, an international body, obviously they'd have, they'd be IAF members, etc. Would that perhaps be a bit of a faster process to get accreditation with SANAS, or does that also depend?
It also, like I said, everybody all depend. The process actually is just the same. We actually handle it in the same way because we still have to review the documentation, and because we also said this depends on the competency of the certification body. It goes going through the available competent personnel they have. So we still have to evaluate whether that management system is actually their management system is complying to 17021, and they have competent personnel to be able to operate in the space of medical devices. And competent personnel include from people from the start of the process in the application or inquiries up to certification decision making. So they need to still demonstrate that. So we have to confirm that.
Okay, sure, that makes sense. I just wanted to also, last question on my part, sorry, but if the conformity assessment body doesn't have a local office, so for example, it's an international body, is that a requirement, or how does, is that something that's been considered? So for example, an international conformity assessment body that applies to you, do you have a requirement for them to have a local office, or they can use the international office?
They can use the international office, and also depending on where they are situated, like we are saying, all the accreditation bodies in different regions and different areas, we also work together, because if a CB is located in a different outside South Africa and they have an accreditation body that has an MLA with IAF, then we work together in that space, so they can start the process, and then we would be working together on this side. So yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. And I'm just a bit mindful of time. Obviously, we are running slightly over, and we've got one more very, very important presentation. However, I just did see Oliver's hand was up regarding the rest of the questions that we haven't addressed now. Please note, we will send these questions to the speakers as necessary, and we will send out the answers to the questions. So just in the interest of time, I'm just taking one question from, I see Oliver, your hand is up. Would you like to just ask your question? And then we obviously would like to go into the last presentation from Kanyasile.
Thanks, Athena. A quick question for Kanyasile. We know with the 1st April deadline, it effectively means any company who's applying from the 1st of Jan will need to submit a 13485 certificate. My question is, if my license is expiring in, we'll say December, and I then apply to SAHPRA in, October, and then I'm issued with a 5-year renewal, does that mean then I have up until 2030 to get 13485 certification?
Hi, Oliver. Thank you for the question. No. So the requirement is applicable to renewal applications, amendments, and new. So it happens that within that period that you were issued your renewal license, you are doing an amendment. You will be required to have your 1345 certificate prior to that renewal amendment license being issued.
Thanks for that clarification, Kanyasile. And we're going to hold, as I mentioned, all further questions. And you can continue to put them in the chat, and perhaps our speakers can address them there. Or otherwise, as I said, we will get them answered and we will send out the information. Also, a hot topic for medtech companies remains the medical device product registration and when it will come into effect in South Africa. Knowing what that roadmap is will help provide SAMED members with the time to plan and budget for product registration. So I want to welcome back Kanyasile to cover this with members. And then if there is time, we'll take 1 or 2 questions at the end. Thanks, Kanyasile.
Thank you, Athene. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
It's visible. Okay. Okay, so like Athene has said, this is the most contentious issue within medtech companies, which is the medical device roadmap. This roadmap was also discussed in the Captains of Industry meeting that was held, I think, a few weeks ago. So within this roadmap, we had discussed internally with our executives and also with other stakeholders such as SANAS, SABS, NRCS, who also play quite a vital role in terms of the roadmap. So I'll start with Q4, which is the quarter that we are currently in. SAHPRA is currently embarking on a pilot that we want to do, and we're looking at certain infectious diseases. And we had engaged with NHLS as well as NICD and also Africa CDC to get the list of infectious diseases that we should be focusing on. We have drafted an expression of interest and have held quite a number of stakeholder engagement with SANAS, SABS, NRCS, NHLS, and other labs such as Epicenter, NEMISA. And we are also drafting guidelines that will be supporting the registration pilot and also the SOPs. And when we head on to the new financial year, we plan to publish the expression of interest, which will be detailing which are the infectious diseases, which are the GMDN codes, which will be called up. And also it will be a voluntary pilot. So not everyone is mandated to participate in this pilot. What we will be doing is that we'll also publish the relevant guidelines that will be supporting the pilot with the expression of interest. And also we will hold applicant engagements with manufacturers, distributors of the infectious diseases that we'll be calling up in order to inform them of the process that we wish to follow, if there are any fees that will be regarded in this pilot, what will be issued, is it a registration certificate, is it a Section 21? So just to provide details on those minor things. And for Q2, which is July to September, we aim to have received applicant submissions and to initiate the process for screening, review, as well as evaluation. And one thing to note is that the guidelines that will be published on the website will be working in progress, so there'll be live documents. That means that while we are receiving these applications and working through them, we'll be making changes because there will be a few things that we have seen or thought will work, but also industry will also provide some light. Therefore, we'll be doing continuous updating on those guidelines. And within Q3, we aim to publish the guidelines, the ones that have been work in progress and the changes that have been done, and then to publish them for public comment. While also doing that, we will also aim to start drafting the call-up notice and to also refine the roadmap, as we know that this roadmap, it is a beginning stage, so it's still in draft. There might be things that will change within the roadmap, so it's not a finalized roadmap. And we'll draft a roadmap and also continue to engage with industry. And we'll be also drafting a call-up plan, and we're hoping that our exco will also be approving this call-up plan notice that we'll be calling up. And the call-up plan will now be including other infectious diseases, a non-communicable disease, and it will also be risk initiated. So it will be, for example, class C and D that are being called up. And when we look at Q2, also July, September, we are hoping that we will be finalizing the pilot and completing it, and also be publishing our guidelines for implementation and finalizing our SOPs. And then in terms of the call-up registration that will be approved by our exco, we hope to also now engage with stakeholders, applicants, and to publish the call-up notice for public comment prior to us doing a full call-up notice for industry to start registering. And this is the product registration call-up draft that SAHPRA has currently drafted. Thank you.
Thanks, that's very helpful, Kanyasile. And as I said, if we had time, so if members that are on don't mind staying for 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has any questions, do you put them in the chat? Or, okay, there is something that's come through from Frangelina. Thanks for sharing the plan. And what about the regulations?
Okay, so the regulations are still under review. We only received the comments that were submitted by industry from NDOH last week. So there is a process for us to be reviewing the regulations. And also, we're still engaging with the executive committee to see if there should be any stakeholder engagements. And so once the review of the comments are done, we'll be submitting that to our exco, and they'll advise if we should be having stakeholder engagements prior to us implementing any of those regulations. And also we have the W2O submission to do, which is the World Trade Organization, to submit the regulations to before we can implement them. Yes, that is all. Thank you.
Thanks, Kanyasile. And I do see Tanya has her hand up. Tanya, please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Kanyasile. Great to finally see the roadmap, and I think it'll maybe give members a sense of, direction, and also a sense of what's coming, and so that they can plan. So we're very grateful for that. Not sure if you are able to respond to this, but if you can, that would be great. As you might know, currently medical devices and IBDs have an exemption from the 18A and B clauses in the Act. And as I understand, I think SAHPRA has in the past been involved in engaging with the minister around those exemptions, particularly around 18B, which deals with sampling and demonstration products. That exemption comes to an end in December of this year. So I was just wondering if you maybe had any inputs that you could give us, and has SAHPRA engaged the minister, or are you planning to?
Thank you, Tanya. We are planning to engage the minister. It was we've already submitted for discussion with our CEO. And the exemption, we're thinking of extending it again due to, with the minister, we're not getting a lot of support from there. So our CEO is tackling the matter at hand.
Thank you. And maybe just for the sake of the members, in terms of 18A, which is the exemption from rebates, incentive schemes, and bonusing, a SAMED task team will and has asked for an opportunity to engage the pricing committee on that particular matter. So we will be attending a meeting in 2 weeks' time with the pricing committee, and we will also be asking for a further exemption from 18A. So it seems that we might be on the same page there, Kanyasile, which is great news. Even if it's around 18A, we would also appreciate an exemption from 18B.
Okay, I just do see there's one last question I think we can take before we close off. So Sabelo has asked, oh, there we go. Kanyasile. Oh, no, sorry. Will the medical device unit hold a stakeholder engagement of the fees gazette in relation to the medical device fees before it's finalized? That is for, yes.
Okay. Hi,
Mhm.
Sabelo. There was a stakeholder engagement that was held a few weeks back by the CFO and also other key members, and the whole gazetted fees was being discussed. And for medical devices, they've currently placed on hold because there are a few other things that affect the medical devices. So you might find that it will be re-advertised and we will be having stakeholder engagements again. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. So that's basically all for today. I mean, we could really go on for hours asking questions, of course. I want to thank everyone for their participation, and we are especially thankful and grateful to our speakers. We do appreciate the guidance and the insights and the roadmap, especially as we look towards the ISO 13485 certification by the required deadline. And we look forward to seeing further participation at the various SAMED forums during this year. If you have any further questions, you can contact SAMED directly, and take care and thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.